Good evening and welcome back to the FFS podcast. I'm your host, Praddy, once again, and this is episode number 3 of season 4 of the FFS series. For those of you who are joining us here for the first time, I just want to let you know that this is our mainstream podcast. This is where we talk about the biggest topics in the world of football, whether it be the top 5 leagues or any other league across the world: women's football, men's football, anything to do with football, basically. So this is season 4 and this is episode 3. This episode has been a while in the making. So let's call it that. It was supposed to be done the previous week. It's been on the cards for weeks now, and yeah, we delayed it. And I suppose if you're looking or you're watching us right now on YouTube live, and you're probably seeing that we've got two guests on the title, but unfortunately, Sandeep couldn't make it today due to a sudden family emergency. So, wish him all the best there. But of course, we are joined by Abreshmina, who is a guest, who was a guest on this podcast in the previous seasons as well. We've spoken to her about women's football and at length, as well as Indian football. I'm glad we could have her on here on the podcast. For those of you watching us, and let me first off talk about the episode topic that we're going to be discussing today, and that is about the recent AIFF ban by FIFA, and of course their subsequent resolution and return to you know, uh, football. Let's call it that. We're going to be talking about the consequences of that, what led to those events, and how they got resolved, and what the future holds for the AIFF and Indian football in general. But before that, we obviously start off with introductions. And Abreshmina, welcome to the podcast. It's been a while, and why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, always happy to do it, even though sometimes last week was it was due to me that it had to get postponed. Um, but yeah, okay. So I am an ex-journalist, a freelance journalist still. But I reported on Indian football and women's football for the last 6.5 years or something before changed industries. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I still am all in following and pretty much writing about Indian football. So yeah, I'm all there still.
Awesome, great. So let's talk about this event that happened. The AIFF being banned from FIFA first. So, for you as a journalist, did you see it coming? Or were there signs of FIFA making not threats, but FIFA giving warnings to the AIFF saying that if certain things weren't done in a particular way, that they would eventually be banned? First off, did you see that coming? Were the warning signs already there? Second question or follow up to that is: did you think FIFA would actually follow up on their warnings? Would they? Did you think that AIFF would actually be banned, or did you think that this was completely out of the blue? You didn't see it coming, and it is what it is.
No, I wouldn't say that I was completely surprised when the ban happened. I mean, basis the rules that are very clear from FIFA's end. Um, it wasn't a surprise because there were a few things like in terms of the committee of administrators, the COA, being appointed and handling AIFF's business. And then uh, the whole thing constantly going to the Supreme Court. It is a third party interference, like a clear third party interference when you see it from FIFA's angle. And to be very honest, a lot other countries have got banned before for much quicker, in these cases than actually India did. We did get the leeway of being the market that we are. So yeah, I mean, I do think that played a part. But then yeah, yes, but I wouldn't say that I completely saw FIFA banning India as well. Like I wasn't sure that they'll go ahead and do it. I thought maybe it'll be like among like be a part of the conversation and that the ban can happen, so we have to resolve this quickly. I mean that kind of conversation. But I wasn't. Yeah, but in that way, it was, you can say, it was kind of a surprise that they actually went ahead and did it. But again, I think it was pretty much. I mean, I wouldn't say strategy, but I don't really have another word right now. It was more like to just get the whole thing resolved extremely quickly. And then, they were back on the panel. So, yeah.
Right. Okay. I can understand where you're coming from because of like you mentioned, if previous countries were banned or previous federations were banned for similar infringements, and were and that process didn't take time, and India's took longer than expected. I suppose that you could sort of you wouldn't be um, chastised for thinking that yeah, I mean there are talks going and India would resolve it within that period, but of course they didn't, and they eventually did get banned, which was I'm sure I think we'll get to that in a few minutes. But let's talk about the events leading up to this ban, and what do you think set off this motion or these subsequent events that happened? What set it in motion?
See, honestly, AIFF had it coming because Praful Patel was there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, there was constant calls for elections from
Right.
fans, from other stakeholders. And there was constant call and it was just not happening. They just kept delaying and delaying and delaying. So I wouldn't say, I mean, they had it coming. Obviously, Rahul Mehra went to the court with it, and then Praful Patel was taken off. Committee of administrators was appointed to clean up the mess that AIFF is. I wouldn't say it's a job completed, but something better than nothing.
Fair enough.
So
A
yeah,
good
I mean,
a start of some sorts. I wouldn't say
yeah,
good start. A start.
of some
Yeah.
sort, you can say, because how it started, they wanted to change the constitution a lot more. I think
Uh-huh.
there were lots of other things that they wanted included in the constitution, which I don't think that it's got followed up yet. It obviously will. I think it will be in the hands of the executive committee right now to decide whether these things, all the recommendations, are implemented or not. Um, because obviously the whatever the COA recommended, FSDL and the state associations went to court against that very
Mm.
recommendations for the constitution, right? So after which the prime infringement thing came into being. So yeah, I am not. I Of course it wasn't the constitution. There was no new constitution put in place as such. So yeah, that's something that Kalyan Chaube, Shaji Prabhakar, and all of these guys are probably going to be working at. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens over there.
Yeah.
One of the starts I would say is having Tetia Hamar in the league committee at the head of it. I do think that that is a reward, like law since which was deserved by him long time ago. I think what he has done in Mizoram is absolutely exceptional. And yeah, I really do hope he gets the support which is extremely necessary to make the changes, as from the AIFF League committee as well.
Okay, so let's talk about the COA because I suppose, yep, Praful Patel's extended reign at AIFF was probably the the matchstick, I suppose. But
Yeah.
to light it, the COA, what is it, and was it actually necessary to set up? Because I know, yeah, yes, I agree, the AIFF was a mess, during Praful's reign and subsequent after his resignation or his ousting of sorts. Now, was the COA necessary because I like that then meant or that snowballed into everyone going to court and then having the third party infringement and all that. So was it necessary, and what was its role, and what did it do, and what is the COA in general for those people listening in for the first time?
Okay, so
Um,
COA, like I mentioned before, it's Committee of Administrators. It is a committee that is appointed by the Supreme Court to, make recommend like look into say the functioning of an association or organization, and like make recommendations for changes. So that is what essentially was what COA was supposed to do with the AIFF as well. It's not the first time that that an Indian sports association has had COA takeover like that. Even BCCI had that. Even if I'm not even Hockey India for that matter, and if I'm not wrong, even IOA, all of these have been having some sort of battles. Even Archery Association. Um, so yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't the first time that it happened with the sports association here. So yeah, they were supposed to make recommendations. I wouldn't say they started on the wrong foot. I wouldn't say that. I don't think the appointment of COA was a problem.
Okay.
I do think that they did not have the best advisors in
Hmm.
the sense of making sure that they don't go out of bounds with recommendations. Like for example, the recommendation I think that triggered the FIFA ban in particular was the number of players that they
Right.
wanted
Yeah.
in charge of stuff. So, I mean, that is again, that is wrong advice from people because obviously the judges and everyone they needed people to advise them about football per se, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that was wrong advice because FIFA rules are very clear about it. It's not more than 25%. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what was the thought in people's head, and they went ahead with something like a 50%.
50. Yeah.
That is too much. I mean, again, I'm not even of that stream of thought that players are great administrators. I'm not one of them. I do think that a lot of times players have inherent biases also. So
Yeah.
I won't say that every former great player would be a great administrator. I don't think like that. So yes, I completely didn't understand that 50% thing, but of course FIFA also didn't and didn't
Yeah.
even agree with it. So yeah, I what I personally think was the advice bit was wrong, and yes, instead of just hurrying up too much. Like for example, we had I think two Supreme Court hearings before the
Right.
FIFA ban. We had two
Okay.
hearings before the FIFA ban. So
Yeah.
instead of just submitting the recommendations, if they had that much time in hand, they could have had more conversations with the state associations and FSDL. State associations, obviously, I'm not saying state associations are great or something. I mean, there's way too much mess in state associations. I handle
Yeah.
that every single day with Football Delhi. But
Yeah. That's
yeah,
first-hand
so
knowledge from there.
yes. So, of course, there's a lot of mess in the state associations as well. But then at the end of the day, what the matter is, if you are if you are the All India Football Federation, you have to take everybody along. You have to find ways to make everybody come together and find a solution. I mean, that is essentially what you're supposed to do. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there could have been more conversations, and they could have probably reached a middle ground, or have a bit more support because there were like way too many state associations that came together and
Hmm.
went to court. So I
Yeah.
think that if more state associations could have been made to sit, explain their bit, like their ideas as well. Maybe I'm not saying it would have
Who
worked.
who's the
Maybe it would have.
who's the one who gave COA that much power to think that whatever we do, you would have to go with it? Because this seems like a simple common sense approach where if you're going to be deciding things for the country or the states, you would rather talk to them and figure out, have a common ground. I'm not saying that everything has to be agreed upon, but there is compromise. This is management 101, right? I don't think
Yeah,
any I'm sure anybody with even half a brain would think that if I'm going to be deciding things for someone else, it would make sense to talk to them and say this is what I'm going to do, at least have that conversation. Now, who's given them that sort of power? Is it the AIFF who's the one who's given them that sort of power to say, like, okay, let's you come out with whatever recommendations you want to, and without any conversation, just come out whatever you think, and then we'll take it from there, because that seems completely stupid, to say the least.
See, okay, in just maybe a sentence in, from COS point of view, state associations are very difficult to handle. Everybody
Okay.
has their own agenda, so it's very difficult for one consensus to be reached upon, to be very honest. It's very difficult with the state associations here because the demographics are different in each state in India. Like there's way too much, variety in terms of people
Ye-
here, and the demographics are really different for each state. So yes, every state would come with its own agenda, and it's very difficult to reach that common ground. Yes. Uh, but I they had conversations with the state association. It's not like they didn't have meetings. As far as I know, there were quite a lot of meetings that took place between the COA and the state associations. But even till the end, they were not happy with everything. With uh, pretty much, I would say the core of the constitution.
Okay.
So yes, I think they thought that they could make their recommendations, and then maybe the Supreme Court could take over and say that state associations have to agree to the uh, what the COA has said, because probably as an example, maybe they took an example from BCCI as well, because even with the BCCI, like the COA that was set up for BCCI, BCCI is Board of Control for Cricket in India, for people who don't know. Even with BCCI, there were recommendations made, and more or less, almost all of those recommendations had to be incorporated by BCCI. But
Okay.
the approach over there was different. Over there, it's more about the BCCI is far more in control than the state associations. It's like there's no the BCCI is the main voice, and mostly state associations will go with it. The
Okay.
situation with football is much different. Uh, it's much more of an open forum than cricket per se. So yeah, I mean that I like there's a difference between, again, that demographic is different between cricket and football here, and I think maybe they went ahead with, because they felt, they took BCCI thing as an example. Maybe that is the case. But yeah, I would again say that was a fault of the advisory committee for the
Okay,
COA.
so the panelists or the advisory committee are filled with who are the panelists in that, or
Uh,
who are the people advising them? Because
See, I don't know all the names. All the names were not made public, but there were two people. One was
yeah,
Ranjit Bajaj and the other was Shajib Prabhakar. These two were there for sure, I think, in the advisory committee. I'm not sure. They were close enough, at least. I'm not sure. Maybe Ranjit, I think, was on the advisory committee. Shaji was also leading the state association side of conversation, but he was also close with the advisory. So I'm not sure actually where he was, to be very honest.
okay, so there are then representations of the Indian footballing ecosystem within that panel. Then, so I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there were people involved. Fair enough. Okay, so okay, I didn't know that it was that fragmented. Now, with that fragmentation, I can probably understand why it takes so long to do anything regarding Indian football, because, of course, with being an open forum with enough voices and opinions there, it's going to be a, I wouldn't say, it's probably a free for all where someone wants to get
Yeah.
something else for their benefit, the other one wants to get something. All right, that's all fair. Now, involving, so the third party infringement, which was FIFA's main gripe with Indian football and AIFF, was involving the Supreme Court. Was that
Yeah, yeah.
the main infringement? Okay, so the way was to, even with their mindset, which was, I'll make my recommendations and let the Supreme Court handle it. Involving the
Hmm.
Supreme Court would have anyway, first of all, been a red flag, right?
Yeah. It would have been, but had it been just one hearing, I think FIFA would have looked away, because then
Okay,
AIFF would have got control immediately. What happened
okay.
was I think there were at least four hearings before the Supreme Court finally said that ban has happened. Now just get your act together and uh, just make sure that India is not banned and the
Course.
under 17 Women's World Cup happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think it was because of that, but I think it took four hearings, and I think it was the to and fro that was
Hmm.
obviously not acceptable. If it's a one-time thing, I think they can probably look away and say that okay, there was stuff to handle, so the code gets into play. But then at least it was just one-time thing, and then AIFF has full control at the end of the day. But it was a lot of to and fro, and then the time frame between AIFF losing control to getting it back was very long.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
wasn't short. So I think that all plays a part, and then the 50% rule. I think FIFA just said, like, I don't know what is happening over there. You guys need to understand
But
that there are some rules
four
that you need to follow.
hearings. I know. Yeah. I mean, FIFA and rules don't are anyway. There is some gray area between them because FIFA and
Yeah, of course.
rules in footballing rules. There's obviously some gray area which of you can look away. You can probably let go, give some leeway. That's all fine. But four hearings, and I don't know where because somewhere somehow somebody must have thought, listen, anymore, and I'm sure FIFA has obviously given warnings to them saying,
Yeah,
hang on, we'll give you, we can only stretch the rules so far.
yeah.
Even as FIFA, and given how much we've anyway played around with rules in the past, there's only so much that we can do. And how is it that someone in the COA or someone in any association regarding Indian football didn't look at it saying, like, let's just sit down, let's just talk about solving everything. I know it is difficult because there are so many state associations, but let's just get something through, and let's just finalize something and get AIFF back to par, because to at least some state of normalcy, just so that we don't risk getting banned. Now, why did that all happen? It's just down to incompetency in the entire panelists and
See,
associations and all of that.
obviously, all the state associations had one representative at the
Yeah.
Supreme Court. But the thing is, as soon as the matter goes to court, then it is going to take some time, at least here, because both sides would present their views, and then Supreme Court would be like, okay, you make it clearer to us in the next hearing, because there
Okay.
are a lot of cases, right? It's not like the Supreme
Yeah.
Court of India is
It's just
sitting only to look over football. It's not like that. So
fair
there
enough.
are way too many pending cases, so it's not like the hearings are going to go on forever. So, I mean, as soon as it goes to court, to be very honest, as soon as it went to court, everybody knew that it's going to take some time, because
Okay.
these things do take time. In fact, it was faster than probably a lot
They
others.
ever worked. Yeah. They've
A
ever
lot
worked.
others. It was way faster, because obviously then FIFA banned only, and then Supreme Court said this is, oh, see, under 17 world, because people obviously like told
Of course.
the judges that under 17 World Cup is in danger and all of that. So yeah, I mean FIFA was also like, no, 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 India is supposed to host stuff and all that. So just get this thing solved quickly.
Yeah.
So I think they just went back to what it was, except the fact that the good bit that I would say is that at least most, if not all, the previous AIFF team per se
Mhm.
was changed in terms of the president, even the director of national teams, Abhishek
So
Yadav, even he left and
a proper
everybody. Yeah,
reshuffle.
yeah, yeah,
I can understand. Okay, I can also understand the Supreme Court taking time, but I guess then the result was inevitable that
yeah.
FIFA would obviously be involved and ask them to ban. But of course, with the ban came
Hmm.
certain consequences, right? Immediate consequences. And that was, I think, the Gokulam Kerala
Yeah,
team, the
it
women's
was.
team was stuck in Uzbekistan of all places,
Yeah,
uh, because they were there
they
to
had
get
already
ready for the.
traveled. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, I just wanted to know, that was one of the key consequences that we'd heard of, but what were the other consequences of the ban by FIFA?
I don't think there was too much in that sense, because I mean even the time frame was small, was very short actually.
Hmm.
The I would say the only major blow was the Gokulam, like the AFC Club Championship only, because I mean I think that was sad. I felt so bad for the
Yeah,
players. No, I mean, you travel, you train for some time for it, and anyway, the Indian women footballers do not get too many, good quality games per se. So,
correct. Yeah,
I mean, to just travel so far and not play even a single game, even they trained also. Like even when they went there, they trained in hope that maybe they'll get. matches to play. But
Yes.
it was just really sad. And yeah, I mean, according to me, I think that was the one major blow. Apart from that, I think a couple of Kerala Blasters had to cancel their friendly games or something. I don't think that other than that there was any major blow as such. Even because they got reinstated in SAF also and everything. I mean, before SAF Championship also things got solved. So I don't think that was an issue in that case.
Of course, the major worry was the Women's World Cup in India.
Yeah,
That India was supposed to hold the under 17 Women's World Cup, and that so FIFA banned AIFF, but FIFA did not immediately rush to finding a separate host. They were like, we will ensure that you get your shit together because we
yeah,
want you to host. So in that way, did you think that because there was no immediate announcement saying that okay, you've banned, and the next announcement was you're not going to be host, so did you feel that a result was coming soon? Like, did you feel that
yeah,
you said already that the Supreme Court pushed it to priority status? They're like, okay,
yeah,
hold on to anything else, let's just solve this out. Because this was an international, I wouldn't I mean an incident, an international, it's not a small, I mean, anyway, Supreme Court doesn't handle small matters. This is
yeah,
it does. I mean, so this is quite an international incident that they did prioritize initially. Prioritize once the ban was
yeah.
upheld. And I just want to know, for you as a journalist and covering all of this, did you feel once the ban was announced, but the fact that they hadn't announced anything else I mean, the only casualty being Gokulam Kerala, the women's team, but nothing else, not the women's World Cup. Did you feel, given that hadn't been announced yet or any change been announced, that there was enough time that FIFA is going to give India and that a result was soon forthcoming?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was also very obvious that the ban would be lifted soon. It was. Because all
Okay.
FIFA wanted was
Yeah.
for AIFF to get the control back. And they, because they were in conversation with the COA and the relevant stakeholders. FIFA was constantly in conversation with them. They also knew that once the ban happens, there's going to be a lot of hoopla around it, and it's going to get resolved. I mean, that is how things happen, unless and until you're a country that is extremely laid back, which is
Yeah.
at least which is not the case, thankfully. Matlab,
Thankfully.
there is a little bit of activity here. So yeah, in that case, so at least in terms of image, I mean, international image, I mean, India is very they don't want to hurt their international image in that sense. So so they also knew that because they were in conversation with stakeholders and everything, and they knew that it'll get solved, which is why it wasn't announced immediately that the World Cup is going away. Because I mean, immediately COA and everyone must have also called, given a call directly and said, "Ki, Baba, we are solving this. Hold on for some time. We'll just solve it." It was like that
Yeah.
only. I'm sure.
Okay. All right. So how does AIFF get back its power? What was the process to get? Like, did the COA just say, this is for the time being, just take back power? This is what we've done so far, and we'll work on it in the few years. Let's just get the band relinquished. Let's just get back to being in FIFA, in the membership program, and then we will sort out whatever has to be done. So what was the process? I mean, yeah.
Basically, COA stepped out because the elections happened immediately.
Okay. Okay. So
So
okay.
as
So
soon as
that's
as soon as the elections took place, then AIFF is obviously back in control. And then the
why why
executive,
didn't that happen earlier? Like, why didn't, after
because
Praful's?
because yeah, because nobody wanted to go ahead with it, and they felt that they could go on forever. So so
Okay.
it didn't happen earlier, because otherwise it was not very difficult. I mean, everybody knew that the it was high time that Praful Patel had to make way for somebody else.
Okay.
But obviously that didn't happen. But then after the ban, the elections happened, and then obviously Kalyan Chope was elected, and then obviously AFF had the control. Executive committee came into being. The league committee was appointed. All of that happened, and then obviously as soon as AIFF is fully in control of the control of football in the country is in the hands of AIFF. Obviously, FIFA doesn't have a problem. It's as simple as that.
Okay, and that had nothing to do with the 25%, 50%. That is something that they'd resolved later on.
Though the constitution, uh, as of now, I don't think there are too many. I don't think there are changes in the constitution. I think it's
Okay,
where it was, and
okay,
they'll probably work on taking a few recommendations. I think they will,
okay.
because some of the recommendations, uh, I think they would agree on, and I think they'll take into consideration.
All right, and what was the mood during, because this is anyway we're talking to fans and all of that. So what was the mood in the India camp from a fan perspective? Of course, there was a lot of hatred, a lot of you know issues on social media. There was a lot of
Yeah,
there are a lot of comments about it, but overall the mood was what? Fret, panic, anger, just
anger. I
basic
think
anger.
anger. I think. I
Yeah.
think people have been angry with AIFF for a long time now.
Okay.
And I mean, having the ban imposed, and especially the Gokulam Kerala women's team suffering like that. I think that I don't think that was acceptable for anybody. And it's not like I think all the fans who are like really invested and who have been following what's been happening in the industry for a long time also knew that the ban was coming and things weren't
Okay.
going right. Everybody who's
Right.
invested would know it
Yeah.
because once you know about the industry and once you kind of know how it's functioning, no, you kind of see that it's not going anywhere really. In terms
Right.
of, I mean, I think with I've like done 100 podcasts by now on just how much there is a lack of structure in Indian football,
Yeah.
especially Indian women's football. So yeah, I mean, for everybody who has been invested, they knew that things were not right at AIFF. There were way too many, spoiled fruits there. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, at least there's been some sort of, sweep in
Okay.
the association. Yeah,
All right. Okay. So now that everything's been resolved and AIFF, the ban has been relinquished by FIFA and they're now back to being members, let's talk about what the following uh, the consequence, or what do you expect now to happen with the AIFF? Now, obviously, they've done the election, they've elected a new president, all of that, but for going forward in terms of the constitution, in terms of the player representation, in terms of just if the first step was reshuffling the upper management, what are the next steps going forward?
I think with the like recent Lee committee recommendations, it's been good. And I personally think like I don't think there are going to be sweeping changes in terms of the functioning or the rules and regulations in totality.
Hmm.
But yeah, there are a couple of nice people now in charge of things. So yeah, I would say that maybe that puts us in good stead somewhere or the other. In terms of regulations, I don't expect too much to change. I think all of that is needs far more structure and far more thought behind it than just over things changing within like 6 months. Also, I don't think that happens. I don't believe that kind of thing happens. That things change in like 6 months, 1 year. If I always believe that you need to have at least a 5 year plan for things to start executing and for things to
Yeah,
get into the right direction.
especially if state associations are going to have a voice of their own and they're going to have their own ideas and to sort of come
I
up
think
with
first of all, state associations need to start doing things. To be very honest, I
right.
mean, it's very what I've seen in these years is it's very easy for the state associations also to come and blame AIFF for everything, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
when like it's not like AIFF can sit and host leagues for you. You have to do that. If
Okay.
AIFF can put rules, AIFF can put timelines, which in terms of timelines, I think AIFF fails because they don't have a set calendar, which is something that we've been speaking about. That if you don't have a set calendar, it gets very easy for people to put a blame that we don't even know when what is happening when. So it's very difficult for us to plan accordingly, which is fair in that sense.
Yeah.
But then state associations also don't, you know, take the onus of really executing things. I can say that about women's football. I mean, everybody knows that the IWL is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And there is, for the past 2 years, I would say, there is a semblance of a timeline. I mean, we kind of know when it's coming, sort of thing. So why not just have your state leagues in advance and be ready to when you get the AIFF circular, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, AIFF is at fault for not having that timeline there, but then you are as much as fault for waiting for AIFF circular to start having your league. You can just
Okay.
have
So,
your league. I mean, it's not like AIFF is going to say, "Oh, you had your league 3 months ago. We're not accepting." It doesn't happen like that. So you can just
yeah.
have it and wait for AIFF circular.
Wow. Okay. And in terms of the state association, who's responsible for the elections and state associations? Like, how does that happen? For if you
I
were
think
to,
in terms of the elections, the members of the member clubs of the state associations, they vote among the candidates, whoever is standing up for the presidency, and
okay.
then and then I think there are a couple of more appointments. I think the GS appointment and all, which is made in again in consideration with the clubs, member clubs. But other than that, obviously the team is decided by the president and vice president.
So that's got nothing then to do with the AIFFs, like what
No,
we've been discussing. So that's just
no, no.
separate. So
Again, for them,
that's
for AIFF also has to look over that elections are happening in the state
yeah.
associations as well. That's
Yeah,
that.
but then who gets elected has got nothing to do with
No.
AIFF and there. So then this is anyway going to be a lucky draw of who gets elected. And I mean, obviously, hopefully, a good candidate. So you wait for that for any sort of changes to happen at state level. So
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
also very difficult. I mean, again,
yeah.
all the member clubs have their own agendas again.
I can see why if I go into any of my Twitter followers who do support Indian football, why the tweets are as such. And
It's
yeah,
frustrating to follow Indian
it is
football, yes.
exactly, yeah. As someone who even as someone who doesn't follow Indian football that regularly, for AIFF to be banned, I wasn't taken aback by a lot. I was taken aback slightly, like you mentioned, by the fact that FIFA actually managed to
Yeah.
follow through on their warnings. But every time during that week or something where it was made public that FIFA was
Hmm.
warning AIFF to stop the third party infringement, I was like, oh, that's not surprising. A and B, this is going to end up real bad if things don't
Yeah.
work out, because I think a few days before that, so one of the another podcast regular who's come on the podcast before, he mentioned to me saying, are you going to be covering, or he asked me, are you going to be covering the World Cup, Women's World Cup in India? I said,
Hmm.
sure. When is it happening? He said October. And then they got banned, and I said, listen, I'm not the only one. No, then he asked me, are you going to be in India? I said, no, I don't think so. I'm going to be in India. I'm in Dubai, so I don't think I'll be there. And I said, India got banned, and then I messaged him. It looks like I'm not the only one who's going to be missing out on the World Cup. And then he's, kind of put out that sad face emoji.
Yeah.
So I could totally understand. But yeah, this seems. I suppose. Would you say that Indian football right now is at a crossroads where they have to decide whether to get better or stay similar? Because in a way, and this is probably there in the description down below, where the bar right now is quite low for Indian football. Being
Yeah.
banned by FIFA isn't a regular comment. Like you've said, it's happened in the past, but it's not something that happens regularly where FIFA goes starts
And that too,
banning.
to be very honest, that too to a market as big as India, to be very
Yeah,
honest.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a regular thing, a regular occurrence. And for that, so the bar is quite low anyway for Indian football. Now, do you think using what's happened in the past month or so, that they've been banned and that they found a way, do they improve themselves? Is this a crossroad where they either improve themselves or they remain the same, or God forbid, regress even further, and then say, even if we get banned again, it was what, another couple of days, and we got back to it. Like we can do some, as they say, jugaad or something, and get back our membership. It doesn't, like, a ban is not going to be a full blown ban. If FIFA was FIFA really meant it. They would have actually kicked us out of World Cup and all of that stuff. But they kind of gave us some leeway and they restored our membership back. So where do you think Indian football is right now?
See, just carrying forward to what you said, if it's Indian football is at or Indian football is at a crossroad to get better or stay comfortable. To be very
Yeah.
honest, that's literally the arena where Indian football is. It's just everybody in the system has become like too comfortable with in their own little space, and the scope of innovation, change, drive to actually get better is very low, and that is the major problem. Because and then obviously not a non acceptance of faults. I mean, that's a problem in general with with people also. I mean, as
Yeah.
it's general human nature, right? Like, if, as long as you don't accept your faults, you're never going to improve. So I mean, that these are just very basic issues actually. But I mean, this is the only way you are going to get on a path of change or betterment, really. And I mean, I am not sure how much better it can get at this point in time. It I would still say that it's going to take a long time still. Um,
Right.
because
Okay.
there are lots of factors involved. There is the obviously the law ongoing tussle of whether ISL is supposed to be ISL will be the top league, whether ISL has taken over everything, and nobody else is being given a look, and all of that, the commercials of ISL, the
I
commercials of
suppose
the clubs.
I suppose like you mentioned, I think a wide range of sweeping changes need to be made, and it can't be
Yeah.
made in such a short period, right? Like you said, there has to be a
If
plan.
honestly, if people are remain scared of losing things, the change is not
Yeah.
going to come. Because like you just mentioned, there is a need for sweeping change. So
Yeah.
whenever a sweeping change happens, you will instantly have a low graph. Like, you will dive down because
Yeah.
you have made too many changes. But that is the only way for you to have an upward graph also. So if people remain scared of taking that dive down, it's going to be very difficult to go up.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I think yeah, I'd agree with you. I think there is there is a complacency or hesitancy of for change, and
Yeah.
we're talking even little change. So imagine if we say that there's more than a little change that you need to do, a full reset, and people are going to be like, "Hey, whoa, 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 slow down. Let's not go that far." And you said like there's a lack of acceptance of faults, right? People aren't here, or people haven't been taking responsibility for any of their faults. And not only does that create these issues, but they also seem ignorant of such faults. So they'll be like, faults, what faults? Like
Yeah.
everything is fine here. So if like it's just at that stage, and that state can be really really terrifying. And I was hoping that something like this would be an eye opener, but like you mentioned, something like this could also scare people into being like if we have to get through this, we have to do a lot of changes. Let's not do that. Like, why do you
Yeah.
want so many changes? Is it really necessary? And then you start questioning yourself, you start doubting yourself, and that is a downward spiral. But that's not the downward spiral that you've been talking about. Like,
Yeah.
those are downward spirals without any change. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess completely agree on that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Like you mentioned, I don't think it's going to be in the next year or so that we're going to see AIFF suddenly pop up and say, we're throwing away the rule book and we're going to bring in a new one and we're going to start doing these whole load of changes. Because first of all, doing that will obviously have issues and consequences with
Yeah.
regards to states associations. They'll also probably need another 5 to 6 uh, hearings with the Supreme Court, which means probably FIFA is going to be on the AFF backside saying, hang on, you can't, like, it's good that you're trying to make changes, but you can't be doing stupid, like, so many at one go and causing chaos for the board as well, and for the
Yeah.
for Indian football in general. But yeah, I guess that is as good a time as any to call it a day on this particular topic. We undoubtedly Indian football will remain in the news for some time. Uh, there will always be changes, whether it be AIFF or state association. There will always be something or the other. The World Cup's also coming up here. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. The Women's World Cup. Hopefully that they do women's football some justice there. Hopefully that the reshuffle at the top of AIFF does work out for the best. There is some sort of initiative taken, but that's all for another podcast for another day. But I guess that's about it. So thank you, Abreshmina, for coming on here and giving your thoughts on this. It was a pleasure having you on here, and I'm glad we could make this work. Fortunately, we didn't have to postpone this for another year, I say another year, another week. I
Another
meant
thing.
it felt like another year, but yeah, fortunately, we didn't have to postpone this to a period where, or to a time where we felt that it wasn't going to be necessary, or AIFF did something else that get overshadowed by it. But yeah, like I mentioned, I can't wait to host you in future such podcasts, whether we're talking about the Women's World Cup or Indian football in general.
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And don't worry, Roshan. I think I'm glad we could talk about this, as well as I'm glad that be here on the podcast and listen to it, because this is a very important topic, not only for us being Indians, but for the footballing world in general. Because, like you mentioned, India is such a huge market that something like this happens, and then everyone's eyes are on you. And like Europe and all these other countries, Southeast Asia, Asian, Australia's, all of them. So I guess, I mean, this is the third time I'm saying goodbye, but I guess that's about it for episode number 3 of season 4 of the FFS podcast. I'll catch you all next week, when we're going to be talking about something completely different. But I guess that's about it. I'm your host, Pratty, once again. You stay safe and see you. By the way, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and share. You can also let us know if you want to be a part of the podcast as well. The links are all down there in the back, in the backdrop. We're there on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So do let us know if you want to be a part of the podcast as well. We'd love to have you. Love to hear from you as well. And yeah, I guess we'll catch you all next week. See you.